They say that you need 5 years to really evaluate an NHL draft class, so let's go ahead and evaluate the 2018 Blue Jackets draft class, see who's good, who's bad, who was reach, and who we think might be the best value pick in all of the draft.
You're Locked On Blue Jackets, your daily podcast on the Columbus Blue Jackets, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome to Locked On Blue Jackets, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I am, as always, your host, Jay Foster. Here with me is my co-host, Hayden Houshorn. Shout out to Hayden for taking the episode solo yesterday. I needed to lie down in a dark room for a very long time, so I did that. And Hayden was very mean about Jake Voracek. So,
I apologize.
We do what we have to do.
Yeah.
Before we get started, I want to thank everyone for making this your first listen of the day every day. Locked On Blue Jackets continues to be free and available on all podcast platforms. We're over on YouTube and the Sirius XM app. If you are a radio person, you can find Locked On Blue Jackets there as well. So like I said at the top of the show, today, they say that you need 5 years to really kind of look at prospects before you can say whether they were good or bad picks. So I thought, let's take a look about 5 years ago, the 2018 draft class, which is, looking back on it, not a terrible draft class. It's a pretty interesting one to look at, actually. So let's just kick it straight off. That was the draft that the Blue Jackets, their first round pick was 18th overall, and they took Liam Foudy from the London Knights. Liam Foudy, in 89 games for the Blue Jackets, has 7 goals, 12 assists for 19 points. How do you feel that this is aged in terms of looking at kind of who went after Foudy, who the Blue Jackets picked up later on, and just kind of like him as a player? How do you feel that Liam Foudy is going as a first round draft pick?
Well, yeah, Liam, I mean, I think we've learned through this past draft process that there is a big drop off in terms of like what a first rounder is going to do who's drafted in the top 5 and a first rounder who's drafted late first round. So, yeah, like at first, I guess what I'm saying is like my expectation on Liam Foudy was always kind of high because he was a first round, but he was a late first round in a pretty weak draft overall, because after Liam Foudy, there's really not much. And what there was left, the Jackets got in Kirill Marchenko. So, I mean, not to spoil that one there, but the Jackets got him in this draft. So it was a great draft for the Jackets. And it's really fun to look back at some of the draft grades and how, certain media outlets thought the Jackets did. But yeah, Liam Foudy's fine. He's produced in games that he's played in Columbus. He hasn't been that explosive center that maybe the Jackets would thought he'd be by now, but you see a little bit from time to time. So when I think of Liam Foudy, I get positive thoughts with him, but then again, here we are 5 years away from when he got drafted, and it's time for him to start producing consistently in the NHL.
Yeah, exactly. It's tough because I feel like Liam Foudy has not had a particularly easy go of it. He was a guy that was he got called up in his draft year from the London Knights on emergency basis, because that, I believe, was one of the years that everyone was injured. So he got called up emergency basis, and he played NHL games and then went back to the OHL. And there was a case of, I think he played like NHL game, OHL game, OHL game, NHL game, NHL game. He played like 5 games in 5 nights or something like weird like that. Then he went into the playoffs and played really well. And I think, unfortunately, seeing playoff Liam Foudy against the Leafs and then against Tampa Bay, where he actually scored his first NHL goal in the playoffs and then proceeded not to score a regular season goal for the next 60 games. And I feel like that kind of hyped the fans up too much. And that's not to say that Liam Foudy is kind of unfairly maligned by this fan base, because I think there's genuine criticism, justified criticism in his game, but it feels like the fans got a little too hype for 18th overall, which, like you said, a first round draft pick is not an automatic success. We've seen that before. We've seen it from Blue Jackets. We've seen it, people are already trying to paint the first overall pick from last year as a bust. And he played like 40 NHL games, So it's tough to really look at Foudy and say, yeah, this was a bad pick, because sometimes if you're going to pick in the back half of the first draft, it wasn't a particularly strong draft either. Like, I don't think at the time, and also looking at it, like, there's no one really in that
after
draft
Quinn Hughes
that I'm like, wow.
Yeah, after Quinn Hughes at like 7 or whatever, he got drafted.
Darlene has turned into a really sick defenseman. Andrei Svechnikov is great. Brady Tkachuk is great. Quinn Hughes. Like, Evan Bouchard is decent, but like, the more I scroll down, the more I'm like, yeah, this was this felt like a weak draft. So what are you going to do,
You absolutely nailed it. Like, on the expectation that we put on Liam Foudy was insane. I think it was because, Connor McDavid had just became a thing at that time for Jackets fans. And we knew that we wanted to spend our first round pick on a speedy center. And we got a guy that at the time people were saying, like, hey, the one thing that this guy's got is speed. Like, he's fast. And he is a really fast player. But Sonny Milano was also a really fast player, but he didn't have any of the other pieces to his game, and expectations were crazy on him. I just look at Liam Foudy as like a better Sonny Milano in a sense. Like, he's a little, his other stuff in his game is a little more polished than Sonny Milano. He just needs to be able to put it together fully, and then maybe we'll have a full-time centerman in the NHL. I don't know yet. He hasn't really done it so far. Like you said, he disappeared after he had that one goal in that playoff game, and he only had 14 points last year. He got tons of time last year to play and really show us something. Again, it's just been a little bit, but yeah, it was a tough draft, Jay. You absolutely nailed it. It was a tough draft, and in fact, I think the Jackets got the best value pick later on.
I completely agree. I just wanted to finish off. We're going to move on and talk about the second round in a second. I just want to finish off with a little bit of Liam Foudy talk, kind of both from now and from its draft year. So I'm on doubleprospect.com, and his PNHLE score, which is basically a value that projects what prospects are going to do at the NHL level. So it kind of takes into account the league that they play in, their age, the position they play, and it puts all of these numbers together. It spits out like how many points you should expect from a player, basically. And Liam Foudy has basically kind of gone, and if you're watching this on YouTube, you'll be able to see. If you're listening to this, he went up and then hit like the 2019-2020 season, and then just started to fall off. Like, he's never been estimated as higher than a 50-point guy. This season he's estimated as a 20 to 25-point guy. So he had potential, and then it just kind of, I think, it's just a combination of things that didn't really work out in Foudy's favor, which is a shame, because he seems like a great kid. He's got a good attitude, I think. He's got a lot of the right pieces. I'm just not sure he's been able to put them together in a way that really kind of showcases what we saw in the playoffs, especially against Toronto. I feel like he was fantastic in that kind of play-in series versus Toronto. Maybe Mike Babcock, again, I feel like we say this with every young player. Maybe Mike Babcock will be able to get something out of Foudy that Larson and Tortorella didn't. I don't know. Let's move on, and let's talk about our favorite pick in this draft. That's Blue Jackets' second round pick. We're going to do that in just a second. But first, I've got to tell you all about AG1, because it's incredible. I started taking AG1 because I was tired all of the time. I was getting sick a lot. And honestly, I heard the hype about it, and I wanted to see what it was all about. And honestly, I don't regret it at all. I drink AG1 every morning before starting my day. I'll get up, I'll make coffee, I'll make my AG1, and it makes me feel like I'm getting the exact right start to my day. It's just really, really great. A lot of great athletes have one thing in common. They take care of their bodies, and a huge part of that starts with optimizing whole body health. A lot of them also drink AG1. That's why I'm a huge fan. With every daily serving, I'm setting myself up for success with 75 high-quality ingredients that give me key day nutrients and support energy, focus, strength, and clarity. It is a micro habit that delivers macro benefits and helps just about everybody take great care of their health every single day. If a comprehensive solution is what you need from your supplement routine, then try AG1 and get a free 1-year supply of vitamin D and 5 free AG1 travel packs for your first purchase. Go to drinkag1.com/NHL network. That's drinkag1.com/NHL network. Check it out. Okay, Hayden, let's talk about everybody's favorite Russian with the flow. In the second round, the Blue Jackets draft Kirill Marchenko out of the Russian Junior League. In 59 career games, he has 21 goals, 4 assists, and they got him in the second round. 49th overall was Kirill Marchenko. We just did his season in review episode, so it's probably still fresh in people's minds. What do you think of that pick in hindsight?
Now that we've already moved down this draft for the Jackets, I still don't know if it's my most value pick because there's more coming later. So, but this one definitely starts it off, Jay, for me. This is an example of Jarmo Kekalainen knows exactly what he's doing, and he loves going to Europe, and he loves pulling players from there. And he did the same thing with Igor Chinakhov, right? He just scouted the KHL, said this guy's lighting it up, no one's really taking him, and he went for him. And honestly, not to totally transition it to Chinakhov, but he's done a great job so far, I think, for considering where the Jackets drafted him. Very similar kind of entry as Foudy so far, but I think it's gone better for Chinakhov. Anyway, Jarmo does a great job drafting players out of the KHL, and this was a prime example when the Jackets got Kirill Marchenko. In fact, back then, I'm just looking at the draft grades because it's just really interesting to look back at draft grades, immediate reaction, and it's 5 years later. The Jackets had a B- on CBSSports.com. They talked about Liam Foudy being a reach, but they say here that they probably got a potential gem in the Russian winger Kirill Marchenko. And I think that wraps it up perfectly. Whoever this writer was for CBS and the little
shout out to them. They nailed it.
Yeah.
So here's my question to you then, because this is something I was listening to one of our newer shows, or one of our shows just relaunched, Locked On NHL Prospect. If you're into Prospect, it's a really great listen. It's my first listen every morning, and they talked about I believe it was the Nashville Predators today, and the Nashville Predators drafted one player at 15th, and then another player like slightly later. And they said that one player was a bit of a reach, but the other player was such a steal that if you basically say, okay, you got this player at 15th and this player at 37th or whatever it was, swap them, and the draft makes perfect sense. So do you feel like, okay, we got Liam Foudy at 18 and then Kirill Marchenko at 49? That's like, if you put that together, how does that feel? Like, because that feels almost like, okay, what if we just say that we took Marchenko at 18th and Foudy at 49th? Like, it feels like it balances out the reach versus the potential steal that we've had in Marchenko.
Yeah, and that's all, draft strategy too. Like, that's one thing I love about the NHL draft is the GMs and the presidents of the team are drafting on the floor. In this case, it was at the American Airlines arena in Dallas, or the American Airlines Center, whatever it's called. Big old arena down there. So they're just on the floor of this arena making like they're reacting as it goes. And I think they see Liam Foudy, they know it's a reach, but at that moment, whatever the Jackets needed, they needed a center with speed. The Jackets have had an issue at center for as long as anybody's been a Blue Jackets fan, it seems like. So for them to reach on a guy that they thought had high potential, that doesn't really surprise me. And for a guy who plays in the KHL to drop all the way to the second round, that also doesn't surprise me, because the Jackets had to wait a long time before they got Kirill Marchenko. We're talking about a draft 5 years ago, and we're also talking about Kirill Marchenko's rookie season. So it's like, it's really crazy. And I guess it also goes for anybody here that might somewhat like the Flyers. The Flyers getting Matvei Michkov at 7? That might prove to be like one of the greatest steals.
He's gonna show up as a 22-year-old and just destroy.
Yeah,
it's gonna be Panarin on speed. Like, it's gonna be wild. Like, shout out to the Flyers. Like, the Flyers are one of my winners of this draft, because they were like, yeah, you know what? We're not gonna be good next season. We'll take the risk. There are some other teams that I feel like could probably have done that same thing, but they decided not to. Marchenko, yeah, I think for value so far, I think Marchenko is is the winning pick of this draft. There's another guy that I want to talk about at the end that we're both big fans of, but if you look at what Marchenko has done versus what Foudy has done specifically, and then you look at like guys that were drafted ahead of Marchenko as well. So in the second round, there are still, I think, 7-8 guys that were drafted ahead of Marchenko, plus 3 guys in the first round that have yet to make their NHL debuts, you know? So I wonder if Marchenko was probably way higher on their board. They probably didn't think Liam Foudy would drop. They wanted both of them. So they were like, hey, let's get Foudy now. Let's get Marchenko later. He's probably going to drop. And lo and behold, he did. And I think it's going to be a similar kind of story with a guy like Gavin Brindley or a guy potentially like William Whitelaw of, hey, if no one else wanted him, we'll just wait and we'll take him with the pick that we have. The third round pick is kind of a non-starter. This was a weird one. So they drafted a guy called Markus Karlberg out of Leksand in Sweden. Drafted him 80th overall. He's the only Blue Jackets draft pick from this draft that did not make the NHL. He didn't even make it over to North America. He's been playing in Sweden his entire career. Last season, he played 49 games and had 5 points in that. The season before, he was playing in a lower league. So I feel like this is a guy that sometimes you're not going to win. You know, it's unfortunate. You want all your picks to work out, but unfortunately, sometimes some of them are going to be Marchenko's, some of them are going to be Karlberg. So there's not really a ton to talk about here. So the Blue Jackets drafted Karlberg third, kind of a disappointing pick, and then they didn't pick in the 4th or the 5th round. Their 4th round pick went to the Predators as a result of a trade that sent Mark Letestu to Columbus in exchange for this pick. They wanted to, again, kind of bolster that center depth for the playoffs. I like Mark Letestu, fine. That pick that the Predators ended up getting, they took a guy whose name I'm not going to try to pronounce, I apologize, who I also believe did not make the NHL. So there's no great loss there. Their 5th round pick went to Chicago in as a result of the Artemi Panarin trade. So, you know, Artemi Panarin, Tyler Mott, and the Islanders' 6th round pick went to Columbus, and Chicago got Brandon Saad, Anton Forsberg, and this 5th round pick. So I'm not too upset about losing that 5th round pick because we got 2 really fun years of Panarin out of it. So
the most fun years of my life.
Reminder of why the Blue Jackets didn't pick in a couple of drafts there. Let's talk about a 6th round pick that made his NHL debut this season. I think I'm probably a little bit higher on this player than Hayden is. The Blue Jackets ended up, this was the result of another trade, I believe, but the Blue Jackets ended up picking up Tim Berni from Switzerland in the 6th round, who kind of came out of nowhere this season and was like, hey, I'll play a full amount of NHL games for you. Sure, why not? 6th round draft pick, even making the NHL feels like a win, right?
Yeah, no, it absolutely does make it a win that 6th round draft pick made the NHL. I mean, the Blue Jackets' 7th round draft pick in this draft made the NHL, which is also a win. But yeah, getting Tim Berni to getting him in the mix here, using him, that is a win for him. I don't know if it's a win for the Jackets, but it's definitely a win for him. Yeah, no doubt. And he has been solid. If he were to develop into a full-time guy, then maybe that would be great. But I don't think it's probably in the cards for him. But yeah, what he's done in Columbus was good. It was he served his time as a Blue Jacket, and that is very, very much more admirable than any of us will ever do. We'll never serve times as Blue Jackets. So yes, good for Tim Berni.
Took advantage of a situation, I think. The Blue Jackets are, again, I'm going to knock wood because I do every time I talk about this. The Blue Jackets defense is going to be a lot healthier this season. Tim Berni is still can still be waived. He can still go down to the Monsters. I think that feels like the best thing for him right now. I thought he was good in limited minutes, but again, something that I've said basically every single episode, played way too many minutes and suffered for it, you know? But again, 6th round pick. I just looked it up. There are only 9 players that were drafted behind him that have made the NHL, you know? So the Blue Jackets getting an NHL player, regardless of how good he is, at the 6th pick, I think speaks to Jarmo Kekalainen's skill at depth drafting.
Another player from Europe, too.
I wanted to bring up, which we'll talk about in a second, actually. So there's a little teaser for you. So in a minute, we are going to finish off the draft, and I will finish my thought on Jarmo Kekalainen's drafting in just a second. First, I'm going to tell you about Birddogs, because they are, quite frankly, the most comfortable shorts that I own. They might be the most comfortable shorts I have ever owned. They look good. They feel great. They are just so good. I can't overstate how good Birddogs are. They have this really cool, like, cloud knit fabric. It looks just like khaki, but it stretches, so you get a way slimmer fit without having to sacrifice movement. I was on vacation a couple of weeks ago, and I wore them every single day, and I don't regret that. They are, like I said, the most comfortable shorts, and I am already looking at getting a couple more pairs, and you can do the same thing. Go to birddogs.com, go to birddogs.com/LockedOnNHL for a free Yeti-style tumbler with your order. That is birddogs.com/LockedOnNHL for a free Yeti-style tumbler. I know that one of my colleagues over here at the Locked On Podcast Network dropped his off a second-story balcony, and it still is fine. So that feels like pretty good value to me. Once again, birddogs.com/LockedOnNHL. You won't want to take your bird dogs off, we promise. Okay, so I want to finish my thought on Jarmo Kekalainen before we finish off this draft. I feel like his strength as a drafter his strength as a drafter is undeniable. I think that's his strongest thing. I think that's the best thing about him as a GM. He does exceptionally well with depth drafting. I feel like you can look at his first round picks, like this year, last year, notwithstanding. But I think you look at his depth picks, his third, fourth, fifth round picks, he gets value, which I think a lot of teams at that point are just like, yeah, draft whoever, I don't care. We've got who we wanted in the first and second round. And I think Columbus, more than a lot of teams, gets value out of their kind of fourth round or below players. I mean, notable fourth and above round players for the Blue Jackets, Vladislav Gavrikov, drafted in the 6th round. Markus Nudavara, drafted in the 7th round. Who else?
He just retired too, Nudavara.
Did, which is such a shame. He's a really nice guy. He got traded to San Jose, I think played one preseason game and then got hurt. Cam Atkinson, Hayden's favorite Blue Jacket / former Blue Jacket, drafted in the 6th round.
Last night, yes.
Value out of these picks, which is really fun. The next pick feels a little bit like the one that got away for me. So the second 6th round pick was they drafted Vehvilainen, a Finnish goaltender who got traded to Toronto in exchange for a guy whose name I am completely blanking on. But he was a defenseman that basically wasn't good enough to be in the NHL. They tried to send him down to Cleveland, and he refused to report, and then just decided that actually he was going to go back to Finland and play there because he didn't want to play in the NHL.
I love that. Like, I'm just going to go home.
Fine, yeah.
I'm just going to go home.
Is the name of him. At the time, it felt like it made sense as a trade because the Blue Jackets had a really pretty deep drafting pool, goalie pool at that time. So that was, I believe, at that point they still had Bobrovsky and then McElhaney.
Yeah,
been backing him up, and then they had Korpisalo, they had Merzlikins, and then they had not Daniil Tarasov. They had Matisse Kivlenieks waiting in the wings, and they had Vehvilainen waiting in the wings. You know, that's a lot of good goalies to like. That's a pretty deep pool, and then obviously Bobrovsky left, McElhaney left, Kivlenieks obviously passed away, which no one could have seen coming. And suddenly the Blue Jackets goalie pool goes from really quite good to, oh, well, we have this one guy. He's still in Russia. He'll be over at some point, I guess. You know, so that is it feels like not necessarily a draft pick that got away, but I wish we'd managed to keep Vehvilainen. I believe he's also back in Finland. I don't think the Leafs kept him. So it's tough to kind of say, hey, how do you feel about this guy? Because he played like one game for the Blue Jackets, but Do you remember Vehvilainen? He was.
I don't
fine.
remember. I don't remember him at all, Jay. So like, I can't say much about him. I'm more excited about the next pick the Jackets got in the next round.
Yeah, you know what? Let's just zoom on. Let's zoom right on past. You know me. You know I love to talk about goalies.
You do love to talk about goalies, but I don't remember this guy.
I like to talk about more than goalies. It's our guy Trey Wolansky.
Yes,
7th round draft pick, made the NHL. Had a cup of coffee. Definitely deserves to be back. Again, a guy. I feel like we just did his season review like 2 weeks ago, but let's talk some more about how much we love Trey Wolansky because it's a whole lot.
Just a couple weeks ago, I'm pretty sure I called him a little Johnny Gaudreau. So, yeah, that shows my level of excitement for that guy. He had a really good year in Cleveland last year. I think he is so ready to make the jump to the NHL. The only question with him is going to be his size. Will he be able to be a full-time NHL player? Will he end up being kind of like a Nathan Gerbe, plug-and-place kind of guy and maybe be up there for some energy and some good times? But I think he could be a full-time NHL player one day. Like, that's how much I believe in Trey Wolansky, and this is the year for him to do it. This is the year for him to do it. When you got a new coach coming in, a chance to make a first impression, I really hope he does this year.
Yeah, it feels like the bottom 6 is wide open right now, and I feel like plug in Trey Wolansky in on a third line and just having like your 2 skill lines, and then your 4th line is going to be your checking line, obviously. But I feel like there's real value in having like a third line that's just an energy line. I've said it before, I'll say it again. Trey Wolansky reminds me a lot of Matt Calvert in many, many ways. And if we get anything like Matt Calvert from him, I think Blue Jackets fans are going to be very, very happy for a long time. This might be the best. I don't know. I'm torn between this being the best value pick and Marchenko being the best value pick. I think I'm going to go with Trey Wolansky just because getting an NHL player in the 7th round
is ridiculous.
149th overall. Where's my list of things? 204th overall. Incredible. You look at the guys that were drafted ahead of him, and you're like, man, I can't believe everyone slept on Trey Wolansky like this. But how about you? Who do you feel is the best value draft pick?
It's got to be Trey Wolansky.
Go for it.
It has to be Trey Wolansky for me, because just from the pure simple fact, I'm more excited about him today, 5 years later, than I am for our first round draft pick in this draft, which was Liam Foudy. So if I can make that full jump from 7 rounds and be like, I'm more excited for this guy's future with the team than I am that guy, then that shows that he was a great value pick. And I mean, the same goes with Marchenko too. Like, I can't believe they got Kirill Marchenko in the 2nd round, but then again, that's just what Jarmo does. So I shouldn't be shocked by it. Like, he loves drafting out of the KHL. He loves finding gems out of the KHL. He absolutely hit it there, no doubt. But I do really think very, very highly of Trey Wolansky. So I'm going to die on that hill, that I think that he was the better value pick in this draft.
That is the Locked On Blue Jackets hill that we are dying on. I think
yes.
It's just Trey Wolansky. We love him. We think he's great. We're going to talk about him forever. How would you? So you said they got a B- from.
They did.
CBS. I also looked this up briefly. I believe they got a C+ from Bleacher Report. 5 years time. We've had some time to look at all of the picks. We've had some time for them to develop a little bit. What grade would you give the Blue Jackets for this draft class?
I'm giving them an A at least, maybe even an A+. I mean, some of these draft picks didn't work out. Like you said, we're gonna have some. What's his name? Marcus Clefbaums. We're gonna have some of those. But yeah, for the most part, this is a great draft by Jarmo. This draft is who Jarmo Kekalainen is, a great drafter, because this draft stunk. After pick number 7, there isn't really anything that has worked out in the NHL at all. But the Blue Jackets have been able to get a couple guys late in this draft that have some really, really high potential. So I think for that alone, Jarmo has done a great job. So I give them an A. I say screw the B-, screw the C+. It's an A for me.
Yeah, I'm going to go ahead and give them a B+, I think. I'm not quite going to give them an A. I think if they get another season out of Marchenko like he did for his rookie season, or a better one, and if Trey Wolansky gets more than a cup of coffee in the NHL, I am ready and willing to upgrade that. But right now, I'm giving them a B+ based on potential alone. And also, I would love to see Liam Foudy figure it out. I'm not sure that he will, but again, he's 22, 23. There's still time. He's still a kid. I think times are ticking on. I don't want to be having this conversation in like 2 years where I'm like, oh, he'll figure it out. I believe in him, But I think as of right now, I'm willing to. I think B+, strong B+ for this draft class. I think honestly better than their 2017 draft and also their 2019 draft. Though the 2019 draft is not really their fault considering they traded every pick that they had. But yeah, I think overall a very, very solid 2018 draft class. And I like that we did this because we were talking about we were going to do, I think we were going to look at the 2021 draft class and kind of look at that and do a review of that. But I'm glad we went back a couple of years because it is good to kind of see, oh, okay, they've had 5 years to prepare. It's not like the 2021, most of those guys haven't even really left juniors yet, Like the 2021, James Malatesta is in there, guys like that. So 2018 felt right. And I had a lot of fun doing research for this and I love being able to be like, oh, hey, I remember that guy. So this was a really fun exercise for me.
I love being able to be like, wow, the Jackets knew what they were doing in this draft. Because if you look at it, they really did. It was a weak draft. A lot of these guys, a lot of nobody names in that draft. So I'll just say that.
Yeah, it was, I think, a shockingly weak draft. But that happens. Some drafts are really strong. Some drafts are not so strong. I think everyone is kind of blinded by how good the 2023 draft was. That you remember that, oh, okay, yeah.
But, Jay, great. That's not guaranteed that this 2023 draft is going to be great. Just because the players have a lot of hype, that doesn't mean it necessarily pays out. That's the whole point of doing the exercise, true. So maybe we'll do this exercise again in 5 more years and we'll be like,
man, that Brindley kid, he stunk. No, we would never. That's all we got for you today. Tomorrow, we are going to wrap up our season review of forwards. We finally made it through the 300 forwards that the Blue Jackets used this season. And we're going to talk about Jack Roslovic. So I'm sure Morgan, one of our wonderful everydays, is going to be real happy about that. So look out for that tomorrow. And until then, thank you for listening. Thank you for making this your first listen of the day every day. Locked On Blue Jackets continues to be free and available on all podcast platforms. We're over on YouTube. We're on Sirius XM. I've been Jay Foster. I forgot my name for a second there. It's fine. It's been a very long day. You can find me on Twitter at _Jacob Foster, JAKOBFORSTER. You can find Hayden at HaydenH971 on Twitter. You can find the show at LO_Blue Jackets. If you have comments, questions, criticisms, send questions in for the mailbag. If you want that, you can email them. You can add us on Twitter, whatever, comment on this YouTube video, things like that. And until tomorrow, make sure you stay locked on.